Okay, so I want to welcome every one of you to the new series. We're starting tonight a new series on Pirkei Avot. Baruch Hashem, we did close to a year series on the book of Kohelet. We've done Mishlei, we've done many series, and we're into our 19th year of this shiur on Wednesday night. 19 years, Baruch Hashem, and going until Mashiach comes. And even when Mashiach comes, we'll continue. Pirkei Avot is a very important book, very important compendium of advice, of musar, of ethics and morals that was put together by our Chachamim. This is not just recent information put together by authors that have lived just recently. This is a book that was composed, put together many years ago, about 17 or 1800 years ago. And it is a book that traditionally the Jewish people learn during certain times of the year. We, however, are going to take week by week. We're not going to do too much of it at once because we really want to have a good understanding, a deeper understanding of the words that are being said, of the advice that is being shared with us. Because hopefully the idea of learning is not just to gain knowledge, but to apply it. There are a lot of people who have learned a lot, but they don't necessarily apply it in their life. They forget about it. They make the same mistakes as others have made, even though they've learned and they should know better. So it's a good idea to really learn something not too fast, so that we should have a better understanding of what it is that it is telling us. What is it that it expects of us? Pirkei Avot contains, in the very beginning, a brief description of our Masoret, of our tradition. The tradition that we have, the Masoret that we have, is a very important part of our heritage, a very important part of our history, an integral part of the Jewish people. Without a Masoret, without a tradition, we really wouldn't be a people. We would no longer exist, like many nations of the world have ceased to exist, even though they were civilizations and they had a culture and a language and perhaps even an alphabet. That was not enough to guarantee that they should continue on for many generations. You had the old Persians, you had the old Greeks, the old Romans, they're all gone. The Spanish and the Portuguese were once very big empires. Today they're almost bankrupt. Right? So you see many nations in the world that are old, not as old as us, but have been around for a while. They're no longer what they used to be. There is no continuity. And even if there was some government that did something good, it did not last, because the next generation came and erased or destroyed everything that the previous generation succeeded in doing. No continuity. Masoret, tradition, therefore, is something very important, especially if this is a Masoret, the way we believe, from God. It is divine. It is not made by man, not made by a committee like some people would like to think. This is divine. This is from Hashem. This contains the blueprint of the creation of the world, the Torah. This is what Hashem actually gave us, the Jewish people, to follow. And if we follow it, everything will be good. Everything will be right. Everything will just flow well. That was the intent. The intent was that we should follow the mitzvot, that we should fulfill the commandments of the Torah. And then life would be very different than what we know today. All the problems that humanity has had, all the difficulties and struggles that the Jewish nation has had to deal with, to contend with, is only because they did not follow the Torah mitzvot. Even though we had the tradition all along, do you think they all paid attention to what it said? Do you think they all did exactly what it says? No, unfortunately not. They may have been somewhat observant of the Torah, but not entirely, because of the various temptations and the many interests that people have, personal interests, agendas, politics, whatever you want to call it. It really messed up a lot of people. And many of the kings of Israel were corrupt. It's a shame. You think only in Mexico there is corruption? No, unfortunately, corruption is worldwide. Man can be easily corrupted. That's a fact. He's a human being. That's it. But we're lucky. We're lucky because Baruch Hashem, the Masoret is with us, the tradition is with us. We can always refer back to it. If we forget something, we can look it up. And we're lucky today that this Masoret is actually written down, because once upon a time, a good deal of this tradition was not written down. We have the Torah shebichtav and the Torah shebaal peh. We have the oral word and the written word. The written word, many of us are familiar with. It's the Torah. The oral word, the oral tradition, was not written for many years. Today it is written. It's the Mishnah, the Gemarot, the Midrashim, the Kabbalah. So today we have what to look at. Today we can always go back. It has been translated into many languages. There's no excuse not to learn and not to familiarize oneself with the tradition. This Masoret has been handed down from generation to generation. And the beauty of this tradition is not only that it is written down, because a lot of people have shelves, bookshelves in their home with all of these books and more, and they don't look at them, they don't learn them. The beauty of this tradition, other than being able to learn from it, is that it has been handed down to us generation after generation in an unbroken chain. Unbroken. I can trace, for example, in my family, 15 generations easily. And from that 15th generation, I already know that it goes back to David HaMelech. We're able to trace back. It's unbroken. You know, I've been in many, many places where there are non-Jews. I used to work with them. And they asked me, how long have you been Jewish? I said, for over 3,000 years. Baruch Hashem. You know, unbroken chain. And we can trace it. Many of us can trace it. So it's not just the lineage. It's the Torah. You take a Sefer Torah that is written by Ashkenazim and a Sefer Torah that's written by Sfaradim and a Sefer Torah that's written by Temanim, who were exiled, and we were scattered all over the world, very far from each other. For the most part, there are a few letters that are different, not major issues, but for the few letters that are different, the Sefer Torah is the same Sefer Torah, the same mitzvot, the same Shema Yisrael. We believe the same. We have different customs, different pronunciation perhaps, different songs and foods. Even in Iran itself, if you're from the north and from the south, you have a different dialect, you have a different food. Okay, that's no big deal. That's because of the galut, because of the diaspora. You have sometimes two villages in the same country, and there's a mountain in between them, and their accent is different. In Israel, if you want to go into an Arab village or town and you don't want them to know that you are Jewish, that you're Israeli, and you're speaking Arabic, you have to make sure you speak the dialect and the accent of that particular town, that little area. Otherwise, they start suspecting you. Wait a minute, you're not from here, right? Today, because of mass communication, TV, radio, and everything, so the accents are being blurred. People are already picking up accents from, but it used to be that even a small distance created a different accent or a totally different language. We cannot afford that when it comes to Torah and mitzvot, that it should be diluted, that it should be changed. Chaz v'shalom. Look at any book and any sidur. You will find mistakes. Why? Because that's normal. When you print something and you copy something, it is normal for it to have mistakes. You think the person who's editing it has perfect vision, great memory, knows what he's doing 100%? Not necessarily. It is only human to make a mistake. It's normal. It happens. That's why there's a special profession and job called proofreading. To edit and to proofread something that makes sure that there's no mistake. So in Sidurim, we cannot, of course, check them as well. And we don't necessarily go out of our way to make sure that there are no mistakes. Unfortunately, it happens. I mean, as much as possible, we try to correct them. We cannot afford, however, that there should be a mistake in our tradition, in the halakha, in the mitzvah, in the Torah. No way. That is why the ones who wrote Sifrei Torah were called Sofrim. Why Sofer? Sofer also means in Hebrew to count. They used to count the letters. They used to be very, very careful to make sure they had the exact amount of letters. They used to check it over again, review it again. And that is why Baruch Hashem, the Sefer Torah are pretty much the same. One letter missing, one letter wrong, it's pasul, one in the whole Sefer Torah. You have to put it back, you have to fix it, you can't use it, you can't make a beracha on it. One letter wrong. Why so strict? Because we cannot afford that our tradition should have mistakes. So one of the nice things about this Masorah that is being handed down is that the chain of the tradition has not been broken, and therefore one is able to see through the study of the Torah, of course, and through the practice of this tradition, one is able to see that the origin is from Sinai, because it's handed down from father to son, from father to son. So one is able to see the veracity, that it's true. My father didn't lie to me. His father didn't lie to him. So by an unbroken chain, you're able to see a great deal about something, how careful they were with it, how much it meant to them, how true it is. And in giving us over the tradition, we also learn another additional important detail, and that is that the Chachamim had a tremendous amount of samchut, or authority, because they are the ones that were teaching it to us. They are the ones who are giving it to us. So we're listening to what they have to say. The Torah says we should listen to the rabbis, as long as the rabbis, of course, are following that tradition. As soon as some other person comes and says, I'm a rabbi too, and he doesn't believe or practice even one mitzvah in the Torah, he's pasul. Don't pay any attention to him. You can call him reform, call him whatever you want. He cannot be trusted, because he doesn't want to have one mitzvah of this tradition. He says it doesn't apply to him. He makes up whatever excuse that he has. So the Chachamim have the samchut on condition that they are, of course, following this very tradition. Why is Pirkei Avot called Avot? Masechet Avot, Pirkei Avot. What's Avot? Avot means fathers. What does this have to do with fathers? So there are various interpretations given as to why the rabbis call this Avot. Number one, the words of the Chokhmah, the Bezat Hashem, today is an introduction. Bezat Hashem, as of next week, we'll begin to actually learn the Prakim. The words of the Chachamim, the Musar that they tell us, comes from our fathers. In other words, the Chachamim are like our fathers. Avot Ha'umah. These are the words that are being expressed by those who have written down the Torah Shebal Peh. Those who have established the rules, or I should say elaborated on the rules that are pretty much mentioned in the Torah, but expanded those rules to include an area called Musar, Derech Eretz, Midot, good character, because that's what Pirkei Avot is all about. It's not halacha per se, it's not the mitzvot, that's in the Torah, that's in the Chumash you can find. So they are taking what they received and using their experience, of course, and their knowledge to elaborate on the area of the Torah called Derech Eretz, called Midot, called Musar. So they are the Avot of the Ummah. They are therefore just like we have Avot, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, fathers of the nation. They are the Avot of Chachamim. The various generations of Chachamim are the Avot of this book, of these laws, of these pieces of advice. They are the ones who established it, and because they began with it and they put it down in writing, they are called the Avot. That's one explanation of why it's called Pirkei Avot. Another one is because who is talking over here? A rabbi is talking to his students, and one set of rabbis is handing over the Masorah to the next generation, whether it's the children or the students. It's the next generation. This is very similar to what happens between a father and a son, or what's supposed to happen. As Shlomo Melech tells us in Mishlei, Shma beni musar avicha ve'al titosh Torah imecha. Listen to what your father has to tell you, to the rebuke. Don't abandon the Torah of your mother. In other words, we see not only the responsibility that parents have to give over to their children that tradition, and not only the rabbis and the teachers, but in the same way a father cares for his child, and hopefully will do so, that is what they are doing. So they are avot, like an av is to his son. Like we are to our children, they are to us. There is a direct connection, there is the care, the attention given, as though we are the children. So we have to hear it. We have no choice. So avot, in the same way a father is supposed to give to his son, they are giving it over to us. And it's also called avot for a totally different reason. Perhaps because this is similar to the avot of melachot in Shabbat. In Shabbat there are 39 avot melacha, 39 categories of work that one cannot do. And there are many, many toladot, categories of work that resemble the original ones. When we say the word category, what we mean is these are categories. Avot, these are categories or very important pieces of information that we cannot ignore. If we ignore them, then we lose out a great deal. We will not be aware of some tremendous important information. So, Pirkei Avot contains avot of chokhmah, tremendous amount and very substantial and very fundamental, yesodim, fundamental pieces of information that one should really learn. And they're not difficult. Anyone can learn them. Derech HaMusar, the way of Musar, or the words of Musar, I should say, helps us a great deal in managing our life. The reason for that is because every human being has two kinds of kochot. He has two kinds of energies, let's call them, in himself. One pulls him to do the right thing, the good thing, the positive, and another one that is always leaning towards the left, let's call it the left, pulling him in the opposite direction of that which is not so good, the negative. How do we know what's positive and what's negative? Usually what the body, physical body, wants for itself is not necessarily the positive. That is why people gain weight. They love to eat. If it would be positive, if it would be good for the body, then the body wouldn't get hurt from it. But the body is harmed by many, many things that we eat. Because we don't always think of what's healthy for us. We eat because it's tasty. It's sweet. But it may not be good for us. So what we usually do is we follow our instinct. And the instinct is not always right. Sometimes it is right. Rabbis tell us that the woman's intuition is very, very powerful. And many times she's right, the woman, when she has an intuitive feeling about something, that the husband should listen to her. If she says, I smell a rat, she may be right. There's something wrong. A husband brings home his friend from childhood. And he tells his wife, Sarah, I want you to meet Shimon. I think we're going to be partners in this new business. And his wife says, no, you're not. I don't recommend it. I smell something is wrong. I don't like his face. What are you talking about? I know him from childhood. We went to the same school and class together. We've been friends all along. I'm telling you, I smell something. I don't like something. And the husband, of course, if he's a little bit disrespectful, he'll start yelling at her. How dare you say something about it? But if he's smart, he would listen to her, because many, many times, the majority of times, she will be right. When it comes to certain matters, like business matters, Hashem gave the woman a very, very developed intuition, that they have a sixth sense, as we call it, to know certain things. They don't know everything, but they know certain things. So that's called intuition. You can even say it's a form of instinct. It just comes natural to them. But you cannot always trust your instinct. You cannot always trust your intuition. It may be misguided. And the reason for that is because the human brain is always going to behave like an attorney. It's a lawyer, an attorney in your brain, trying to justify things, trying to see things its own way. without consulting with somebody else who's not biased, without asking somebody who perhaps is more knowledgeable than you are, who has more experience than you are, you may be easily wrong. Very, very possible. Right? Yeah. How could you go buy a piece of real estate without consulting, unless you're an expert, unless you're very knowledgeable? Even so, you have to be careful. Maybe it's a trap. You know, I know many cases people bought a home, they didn't inspect it, and it was completely infested with termites, completely rotten, the pipes had to be redone. Why didn't you hire an inspector first to see it? Now you have $100,000 of work to do. You could have easily subtracted that money from the purchase price had you known that there's problems there. Some people, because of their ga'ava, because of their arrogance, right? I know better than them. You see what happens? So to go by instinct or to go by your own judgment, it could be faulty. It could easily lead to a mistake. Musar, the ethics or the morals that we learn, are supposed to leyaser otanu. They're supposed to straighten us out. And besides straightening us out, of course, the idea is that we should attain good character. We should refine our character. When a person therefore learns Torah, learns Musar, hopefully with time he will grow and mature, not physically, spiritually. So this is what Musar gives us. This is what the Torah gives us. And that is why it's so fundamental in the life of a Jew. Because it's so fundamental, you will find that there is a special mitzvah in the Torah of Ocheach Tochiach et Amitecha. Give Musar to your friend. Rebuke him. You want a fancy word in English? Chastise him. You know, there's all kinds of words that basically what they have in common is show someone, direct someone to do the right thing if you see he's doing the wrong thing. But it's interesting in Lashon HaKodesh, if you know Hebrew, you will find that the word lehochiach means two things. It means to prove, to show by bringing proof, hochacha, lehochiach. Tochiach li, as we say in Hebrew, prove it to me. And lehochiach means to give tochacha, to give musar, to give rebuke. Two words that are very different, in a sense, sharing the same root. Because in reality, they're very much the same. Latet musar leochiach, with tochacha, to rebuke someone, you know how you do it? When you prove to him that you're an example. So you have to prove to him that he's wrong. You can't just say, this is bad, this is wrong, this is no good. If you want to be effective, you have to prove it to him. How are you going to prove it? Well, first of all, by example. If you follow a certain way, you say, listen, this is the one. Otherwise, he's going to tell you, why should I do it? You don't do this. Imagine somebody that has a very chaotic and very, very poor relationship with his wife. Starts preaching about Shalom Bayit to others. I don't think his words will be too effective unless people are not aware of it, of his problems. You want to be effective in showing the right way to your son, to your student, then prove it. Prove it by example. Prove it by experience. Show something that you can convince him. So to properly give musar, that's what the Chachamim did. They gave us tremendous amount of proof and examples, pesukim in the Torah. And if you look at the Torah and you read story after story, what will you find? How many people made mistakes? The Torah records it. The Torah even records the mistakes of Moshe Rabbeinu, of David HaMelech. Of the greatest leaders of Am Yisrael, the Torah records their mistakes, not only their accomplishments, their mistakes. Why? So we should learn from them. They admitted it, and they went about correcting it. They did teshuvah about it. Right? They ask forgiveness about it. We're only human. Yes, everybody can make a mistake, but fix it. Repair it. Do teshuvah on it. For that, there's no excuse. Mistakes happen. So leochiach is a very important idea expressed in the Torah, that we have a certain responsibility to our brethren. we cannot ignore them. If you grow up in this country, then you grew up with the concept called mind your own business. That's American concept. Don't mix in. Judaism says there's no such thing. I have to. Your business is my business. You belong to my people. You're my family. I have to care about you. I cannot ignore you. And that is why the Torah has a very special mitzvah that when one sees his enemy's donkey, his donkey not finding its way home, go bring him back home. You see an avedah, something that belongs to somebody that you don't like, you have to return it to him. It's a mitzvah. If we have to, if we're obligated, if we have a commandment, a mitzvah, to bring back something that is physical, material, a material loss to our enemy, Jewish enemy, the more so if we see a Jewish soul that is carried away, that is off the derech, off the track, the more so that we have to bring him back, that we have to show him, this, what you're doing right now is wrong. Now, you know where this is a problem today? It's a major problem when people want to marry out of their faith. I'm not going to get into too much into this topic right now, but it's a very sensitive and difficult topic to talk about because people don't understand what's involved. And if you grow up in a certain way without certain pieces of information, then you may not be sensitive about it. You may not realize what's wrong with certain things. You know, it's like telling somebody, don't eat that, that's not kosher. But Rabbi, come on, Domino's pizza and this guy's pizza are pretty much the same. They use mozzarella cheese, and they use olives, and they use tomato paste, and it's the same dough. What's the big deal? Now, if you said it was pig, somehow some people understand, oh, that's a filthy animal. It has nothing to do with filth. It has nothing to do with being unhealthy. It has to do with the mitzvah in the Torah, that certain things we can eat and certain things we cannot eat. And it has nothing to do with health matters necessarily. But somebody who did not grow up with it will not be sensitive to that. All the girls in the public school were very nice to this young man. There were girls from the Philippines, from Korea, from Thailand, from Nigeria, from Sweden. Nice and intelligent. What's wrong? Human beings. Human beings. What's wrong? If somebody does not grow up with the tradition and he's not even told or explained what the difference is, how should he know? It's not his fault. It's the fault of the parents who sent him to public school, who exposed him to an environment which is not sensitive to these things. What's the big deal? Yes?
So oftentimes, I know this to be true in the Persian community, there's generations of traditions with respect to, for example, keeping the Shabbat. So Persians keep the Shabbat, but in Iran, they use the lights and they drove their cars. And now they came here, and it's a different.
Sure, because they were ignorant. The problem in Iran was the problem in many countries where in a particular town or village there was no rabbi, there was no Jewish school. They were disconnected from halakha, from Torah. They had no guidance to be able to explain to them all the rules and the limitations. And even if one generation knew, they didn't have the teachers to give it over to the kids. The father was busy going from town to town, from village to village to sell his merchandise.
So now that that's carried over here, for example, one thing is not separating the plates.
And now they come to this country, whether they're from Iran or from Russia.
Yeah.
In Russia too, they were disconnected for several generations, depending where they grew up. And now they come here and said, "What's this? Oh, this is primitive. I don't need this. I never knew about this." They have a hard time with it.
And the kids that are telling them, the parents, causes a disconnect because they're saying, what's wrong with my plates? I'm washing the plates. I don't bring non-kosher food.
That's what we're going to see soon. I'm going to already say, since you brought it up, that a very important part of tradition, when we receive it, is the willingness to listen. Many children don't like to listen to their parents. They think they're smarter. It's a certain attitude. Tradition if you value your tradition, which not all of them do, part of it says you got to listen to the previous generation. You got to listen to what the rabbis have to say. You have to be receptive to what they're telling you, because the chances are you may not know everything. Wouldn't you want to know right from wrong? So it all depends how it's presented. That's number one. Number two, it depends on how receptive they are. Not everybody is receptive because it may inconvenience them. They're used to working on Shabbat. A lot of Persian Jews have told me, Rabbi, it's my best day. And they show me a whole bundle of cash from this business. It was a business in El Monte, car wash. He says, how could I close Shabbat, Rabbi? He has a car wash in El Monte. It's my best day. Now I have to explain to him, which I did for an hour, him and his wife, you don't understand. The money you make Shabbat, you're going to lose a few months from now. There's no beracha. But it involves many, many classes. It involves a class on Shabbat. It involves a class on Emunah. What is Emunah? What is Shabbat? Parnasa, Mazal. I have to explain all this for a person to realize that he's not going to make 1 penny more by going against the Torah. He doesn't understand that. He sees the bundle of cash, all the cars coming. He says, this is the best day. The mind is so narrow. It's so narrow and so unlearned that it's hard to convince them, especially if they're older. You really have to start working on them. So if they come and learn and they're serious and they say, okay, I want to learn a little bit more about it, then there's a chance they'll change their mind, as many have. But it's not easy. It's not easy because you can't run after all of them. See, if people come to me, I'll gladly sit down with them. But I can't start running after all of them. It's impossible. It's just impossible. So there has to be a certain initiative or interest on an individual who wanted to come close to the Torah and saying, this must be something special. I read somewhere that Jews were even willing to give their life for Shabbat. Why? Oh, you're asking questions? That's good. Because in the Agadah of Pesach, which we're going to be reading a couple months from now, you're going to find one of the 4 children, She'eno yodea lishol. Right? She'eno yodea lishol. He doesn't even know how to ask. They don't want to ask questions. Those are the most dangerous of all. Because the Rasha, at least, he bothers you. He starts up with you. So you start up with him. So there's conversations. She'eno yodea lishol, you may never discover them. They don't even come to class. They're afraid of discovering the truth. That's chaval. Today there's so much in the internet. Find out. Find out what it means to be Jewish. So anyway, part of the tradition is not only in handing over to the next generation the halachot, the musar, the Torah. Part of the tradition also involves making sure that the people who belong to this tradition are taken care of. That if they are doing something wrong, then we show them the derech. It's not just about teaching. We got to look after them. If we see something that is wrong, we have a responsibility, and that is what the rabbis meant by Kol Yisrael Arevin Ze Lazeh. We're all responsible for each other. There's a pasuk that says Kiner mitzvah v'Torah or v'derech chaim tochachot musar. The mitzvah is like a candlelight, the light of a candle. The Torah is a very, very bright light. V'derech chaim tochachot musar. The way of life consists of tochacha, of musar. In other words, direction. The way of life involves direction. What does that mean? It means what we just said, that part of living life correctly has to, we have no choice, has to implies that we are willing to receive, we are willing to be receptive to, that people may tell us off that we are wrong. That's part of life. If you want to do things right, we have to assume it's possible that we made a mistake. And we're willing to change and to learn. That's part of life. That is a very important component of living life righteously, of doing the right things. Because it's impossible for us to know everything. Therefore, at the very least, be adaptable and be receptive that if people tell you you made a mistake, maybe you did. You have people who are alcoholic, drug addicts. They're so addicted to their habit that even if you show them their lungs are black, even if you show them how their family is destroyed, how they lost their job and career, their life is messed up, they're going to be in denial. It's not my problem, it's their problem. They don't know what they're talking about. All kinds of excuses to deny their real problem. That's what the human being is capable of doing. And because the human mind is capable of denying, that is why we've had problems throughout our history. Incredible problems. Now, somebody just asked me a question the other day. If you look at the Sefer Melachim, the book of our kings, you find an incredible level of rebellion by many, many Jews against the prophet. Not only against Hashem, unfortunately, not only against the Torah, against prophets who were proven to be real prophets. They were proven to be real prophets. They proved themselves. They even threatened some of these prophets. The prophet Yirmiyahu is telling them and warning them the Khurban is coming, the destruction of the temple is coming. And you wonder, what's going on with these people? Why are they so against him? Don't they see it? They see Nebuchadnezzar coming. They saw it several times. They saw so many troubles in the past when they misbehaved. What's going on with them? Back then, there was a very big yetzer of Avodah Zarah, of idol worshipping. That, of course, had to do with many, many of the problems. When you have a yetzer hara, it's very, very powerful. It can be very powerful. It misleads people, even the best. It's not only the yetzer hara. There was a lot of misinformation. You had Nevi'ei Sheker. You know what Nevi'ei Sheker is? That's a big, big danger. A Navi Sheker is a false prophet. And to be able to distinguish from a false prophet to a real prophet is sometimes tricky. And what do you do if there's a contradiction between what the two of them are saying? The false prophet says, there's going to be peace. We're going to win. There's not going to be war. They're going to run away. That's exactly opposite to what he's saying. That's already leading to confusion. Then you have personal agendas, as we said, Avodah Zarah, all kinds of, and there's politics too. What's the politics? The king doesn't want to allow this prophet to basically say anything that he wants. Because what's the prophet saying? The king is also going to go to Babylonia. He's going to be exiled. You think he wants the citizens to hear that? That they should make a rebellion? There's politics, there's Yetzer Hara, there's Nevi'ei Sheker, and of course, there's a detachment from the Torah. They're not so connected to the Torah. You think they're learning Zohar? They're not into it. They're busy doing other things. And they have other troubles besides that. So altogether, these people, unfortunately, were overly optimistic, were not realistic, were detached from the Torah, and because of that, they rebelled time after time after time. Until Hashem says, listen, I'm sorry, I have to kick you out. Throw you out of the country, destroy that beautiful Bet HaMikdash, and maybe then you will begin to cry and realize it, that the Navi Emet was Emet, and the Sheker was Sheker. Otherwise, how are you going to learn your lesson? Sometimes you have to get Makkah, you have to get Makot. People sometimes get a very, very big Makkah from Shamayim. They get, as we say in Yiddish, klep, until they realize, that something is obviously wrong. Yes?
Is the judgment less severe now since we don't have Nevi'im? Because, we don't have people to tell us where we're going wrong.
That's a very good point. We do have that brought down. It is mentioned that had we had today Nevi'im and the situation would look this bad, we would have been in worse shape. Because to have a Navi and not to listen to him is very, very, is bad. Today that we don't have a Navi, not that we are excused, but obviously people can say, this is a generation that is so weak, they don't even realize how far they are. There's nobody to point out the direction to them that they can trust. It's a very weak generation. Yeah, so you're right about that.
What's
There's
the
something
sim-
to that, yeah.
What's a similar pole as Avodah used to be back then today? Like, what's a similar Yetzer that's very difficult to conquer today?
It's called the dollar bill. Yeah. The dollar bill, the euro, not the tuman. That's worthless. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that has become an idol. That has become my Elil Zahav. But soon it's going to be worthless. Anyway, so we see how much we have a responsibility for ourselves and for our children and for our neighbors. We have that. We cannot assume that he or she will know on their own, especially if they're so detached. And if we see them doing the wrong thing, we have to try our best. If they still don't want to listen, what can we do? But we have to try our best. Going back to what we were saying before, that the human being has somewhat of a conflict in himself. And that is what makes life a little bit challenging. We're being pulled in different directions. The direction of being positive, of doing the right thing, the good thing, following the tradition. And the temptation or an interest in doing the opposite. However, fortunately, Hashem has given us a tool that will bring about hopefully some equilibrium or some way for us to overcome the deficiencies, to overcome our weaknesses. And what is that? Sechel, common sense. Common sense. That's number 1, too. The common sense plus the ability, the physical ability to actually make changes is a very important idea, because we should not think that because we have certain tendencies or inclinations, we're stuck. This is the way they are. This is the way we're going to be. Chas v'shalom. You're not born like that to remain that way. We are born perhaps with certain inclinations, and we have certain challenges, and we have certain temptations and so forth. It does not mean that we cannot control ourselves. We can discipline ourselves, we can control ourselves, we can make changes in our lifestyle if we choose to. So we have the secher, we were given the common sense and the physical ability. Baruch Hashem, the hands, the feet, everything. We were given the tools that we need to make the changes if we want to. So, even though we all may have certain habits and certain weaknesses, we are capable. Everyone is capable of risun hata'avot, as it's called in Hebrew, controlling and disciplining one's desires, and shlita, a certain control over one's personality. Meaning that if he's an angry person, he doesn't have to open his mouth. He can still be burning mad inside, right? But at least he didn't open his mouth. So he gets some credit for it. The greatest credit he will get, of course, is when it doesn't even bother him. See, when a person is temperamental, he's a ka'asan, but he holds himself back with not yelling and not answering back, as we say in Hebrew, kol hakavod lo. That's very, very nice. He could have really made a big, big scandal at home or in the business had he said something during the time he was upset. You know, Kohanim have a problem. Kohanim, they say, are very, very quick to anger. So, Avram, what happens if you have a Kohen from Isfahan? Huh? Yeah, some people are like that. You know, you have to control yourself. So let's say he doesn't open up his mouth, Baruch Hashem. But the biggest credit will go to him only if it doesn't bother him. Because that means that he is completely aware of his character. He is aware that that issue is really shtuyot v'havalim, nonsense. And he realizes how serious it would be for him to react in a negative way. That he may get Gehenom for that. So for a person to be focused on all of that at the same time, it's not easy. It takes time to train oneself to realize, what he said, he insulted me, it's a big deal. Let him talk to the wall. Not everybody can do that. It's very difficult. Some people care about their kavod. But if a person begins to say, wait a minute, that's min hashamayim anyway. If I had to hear what he said, it's min hashamayim. Number 1. Number 2, why should I stoop down to his level and be as silly as he was. Do I have to be bad just because he was bad? That's number 2. And number 3, if I get mad, it's also Hashem will be very upset. If we know these things, we'll react differently. And this is just an example with anger. It applies to any midah, any characteristic that one may have. So we have the ability to control ourselves. Nobody should say he cannot control himself. This language of control and discipline is called in Hebrew derech eretz. When the rabbis tell us derech eretz kadma la Torah, derech eretz comes before the Torah, this is what they meant. Working on one's character is very, very important. Because a person can learn the whole Torah and he didn't control himself. What's all this information going to help him? What's that going to do for him? A person has to have a good foundation if he wants to continue to build on it. Solid. The foundation is derech eretz. So that's the language of discipline and control. The language that we call derech eretz. He controls himself and he conducts himself in a proper way. The derech of the eretz. The way of the land. The way that Hashem wants people to conduct themselves. The right way, the correct way. But there are some strings attached. How do you learn derech eretz? Do you go to college? Do you go to China and you meditate? What's the best way to learn derech eretz? Through Torah. The reason for that is because only the Torah can give a person the proper anchor. You know what an anchor is? You know, a boat is in the sea and you don't want it to move, you put down the anchor. If a person wants to anchor his derech eretz for it not to be ever changed, not to be ever go back to what it was, he needs some sort of strength, some sort of backup. He needs the Torah. The Torah gives the direction. The Torah will teach him what is proper derech eretz, and the Torah will give him the strength to be able to endure and continue. If you learn in college about, or you go to anger management classes, as they call them, maybe you'll get something out of it. I'm not saying no, because that's universal. Anger is something universal. But it may not last. People may have a relapse. Same thing happens to people who go to rehabilitate themselves from drug and alcohol. They have a relapse. They fall back into it. There's nothing anchoring them. A person needs Torah to anchor it. All of these other sources may not have the strength to hold somebody back. Let's say somebody's told, listen, don't be a fool. You're ruining your life. You know what he may say? What kind of a life do I have? Not married, no kids. Who cares? You see? So whatever you are telling him may not work. If you come from the different position, from an angle of Torah, Shamayim, Olam Haba, it's a whole different picture. You're here on a mission. You have a beautiful neshama. You're very special. You know who you are? You know who your grandparents were? Look. Don't you want them to be proud of you in the Shemayim? You mean they really know what's going on down here? You better believe they know. And they're crying now for your soul. Oh, I didn't know that. See, you're coming from a different perspective. From the perspective of Torah. Very, very different. It's still not a guarantee, but it has a better chance that his derech eretz will be anchored, that it will survive. And of course, through the Torah, that is how one is able to reach his ultimate potential, to grow, to elevate himself to high levels of Kedusha. What we see in life, especially in the 20th and 21st century, is that man has tried very, very hard to escape certain limitations. And how has he achieved that? By building a plane and by building a spaceship. He has been able to escape the limitations that he had before that, of not being able to fly in the air. Right? He has been able to escape from the earth, to go to the moon. Man has always tried to escape his limitations. And he has invented the binoculars and the telescope to see from far. All kinds of things. Man has been trying to escape limitations that he has. And he has succeeded. How? not only did Hashem, of course, basically allow him to succeed, it's through effort, continuous effort. Continuous effort, a person will find a solution. Mr. Pasteur, because of his continuous investigation and efforts, they paid off. And he found out why many, many women were dying in the places where they were giving birth. Many women were dying. Well, what's going on? What's wrong with having a baby? Until he discovered that they were using the same towels. The sick and the healthy were sharing the same towels. And he says there must be something wrong in the towels. There must be something that later on was called bacteria. And guess what happened? They all made fun of him. Other doctors. What are you talking about? Bacteria, filth, and this? And he insisted on changing the towels and washing hands and putting gloves. And guess what happened? Boom! 90% drop in the death rate or more. He stopped. He proved it. So because of continuous effort, right, by trial and error, of course, he succeeded in overcoming all kinds of challenges and all kinds of obstacles, all kinds of difficulties. Man is capable. In the same way that the physical body wants to escape certain difficulties and overcome certain obstacles, the neshama also. The neshama needs to also escape, needs to also release itself from its limitations, that it's in a physical body. The neshama is pure. How is the neshama able to overcome anything? By following the chukim and the mitzvot, by following the laws of the Torah. That is how a person elevates himself. Now we will understand why the Torah uses various metaphors to describe itself. The Torah uses metaphors to describe itself. One is it compares itself to an etz, a tree. Another one is light, and another one is water. You will find these three metaphors. Etz, or v'mayim. Why is the Torah compared to an etz? Etz hayim hi lamachasikim ba. What's so unique about a tree? It's very, very strongly rooted in the ground. It doesn't move. No changes should happen to the Torah. The Torah should last forever. The principles of Judaism should be strong and should be handed down from generation to generation without the chain being broken, as we said before. Like a tree that is very strongly rooted that you can't just move it around. It's also called an Etz Chaim, a tree of life, because a fruit tree that has fruits provides nourishment to people. So it gives a life. The Torah gives life, it gives encouragement, it makes people happy, it gives them a sense of why they should continue living, even during hardships. And I would like to add my own interpretation that I thought of. Why is it called Etz Chaim? Etz Chaim means a tree for eternity as well. Eternity. Does anybody here know how long trees live? Depends on the tree. Do you know that there are some trees that can be over 3,000 years old? 4,000 years old? 5,000 years old? Yeah. Today we don't have any. Today the oldest tree is about 3.5, close to 4,000 years old. And some of those old trees we have in the state of California.
Redwoods.
They are around from the time of the Mabul, right after the Mabul. The sequoias and the redwoods. Proven. This is not just a theory. Proven. Tall. Not only are they tall and broad, they're over a couple thousand years old. You know what? I thought about this. You know what this proves? The tree may be one of the only creations of Hashem in the physical earth, besides the sun and the moon, that can be around for almost eternity, for the 6,000 years that this world will last. Hashem says, in the same way that an etz is an etz chaim, this is how you will be, the Jew. If you hold on to it, you hold on to this tree, you follow the Torah, you will also live for eternity. Not in the physical world necessarily, but your neshama in olam haba. I thought that was a nice interpretation. Etz chaim hi. Why is it compared to light? It's compared to light because light illuminates. So our physical eyes can see if there's a little bit of light in the room. In the same way that light, physical light illuminates, so does the Torah illuminate. It illuminates the neshama, it guides us. We need guidance in this world. You come into this world Well, today they have a GPS. You don't have to know where you're going. You don't have to look at the map. It will show you. Turn right, 100 feet, turn left, recalculating, right? The neshama has its own GPS embedded. If we let it, it will do the right thing. However, it needs handrails. It needs those, in the freeway you have sometimes those things, I don't know what they're called.
Guardrails.
That they let you know you're off the track.
Indicators.
That the tire feels it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have various indicators. The neshama needs various indicators from time to time to make sure that the body is not leading it astray. Neshama is pure. So there are indicators. These are the indicators, of course, are the Torah and the mitzvot. That we compare ourselves, and it's reflected back. Are we following or not following? Are we doing it right or not? So the neshama acts like a beacon of light to show the way. Plus, the Torah, of course, is a beacon of light to make sure that we don't stray. These are the indicators that we need. And in addition to the light, you need indicators that you're not straying off. Because sometimes it could be very foggy. Sometimes it could be very cloudy. We don't know. We don't see well. We're not focused. We're distracted. So we need indicators. So that is why it's compared to a light that shows us the pitfalls, shows us where to stay away from. The light of the Torah, of course, is also very powerful. It can take us out from the bottom, from the depths of the tumah. If somebody fell into this quicksand, as they call it, the tumah, which is hard to come out from, the Torah has the ability to drag him out. That's how strong and powerful the Torah is. Why is it compared to water? Water, again, is something that gives life. The majority of the planet Earth, about 70%, is water. Did you know that? The majority of the body, over 55%, depending, is water. Most of the body, the human body is water. Most of the world is water. Now, everybody here knows the formula for water, the chemical formula, H2O. Do you know what H2O means?
1 hydrogen, 2 oxygen.
One?
Two hydrogen, one oxygen.
Right. 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. Okay? Now, what's the significance of that? Well, all it means to most chemists is that the two are very, very strongly bonded, these 2 atoms, right? And they have a certain mass, and it appears to us like water. But what I thought was very interesting about the 2 and 1 atoms is look at the word in Hebrew, mayim. The word mayim in Hebrew consists of how many letters? 3. 2 and 1. 2 mems and 1 yud. Just like the 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen, you have a mem, a yud in the middle, and a mem. I thought it was interesting. Yeah. So anyway, so this water gives life. Torah, of course, gives life. The Torah nourishes us. The water nourishes us. It allows us to survive. Without water, we would not be able to survive. And what's so special about this water, other than that it allows us to survive? It is usually readily accessible, unless you're in the Sahara Desert, maybe. It's accessible. It's easy to find. You don't have to go fetch it in the sky. Lo bashamayim. Karov elecha davar meod. It's very close to you. To learn Torah, to say Tehillim, is that difficult? To come to shiur, how difficult is it? Just to listen. That's all water. It's accessible. And why is it that we have to learn so much Torah and not the Goyim? Because our missions are very different. The Goyim contributed to humanity whatever it is they contributed, whether it was the philosophy, the art, the sciences. They contributed, each one contributes something. The Jewish people's mission, however, is the Taken Olam Malchut Shakai, is to establish a world with the kingdom of God present here, down here, not only up there. To bring His presence down here, it's a very, very big job. And that is where we have to focus on, not so much on everything else. Yes, you can be a physician No problem with it. You can be a carpenter, you can be a plumber, but that's just a profession. Just a profession. The mission, the ikar, the tachlit, is the taken olam. That is why the praying every day, the learning every day, the mitzvot every day is so crucial. Because otherwise we're not fulfilling our mission. Why did we come here for? To play around, to go on a picnic, to go to Disneyland, to have fun, and eat popcorn watching a movie, and drinking beer and looking at the Super Bowl? I mean, that's not what life is all about. Retiring, we're retiring the grave. The job of a Jew is to be active throughout his life, fulfilling his mission, whatever his personal mission is. There's different missions, but it's all to do with Hashem. Not a profession. You can retire from your profession. At some point you can stop working, maybe. But your mission, you never give up on your mission. So throughout our life, by observing the mitzvot, we are able, as a Jewish nation, to demonstrate to the world that Hashem is Echad, that the mitzvot are for real, that the mitzvot are eternal. And if we would have done that properly throughout our history, that we would have been much more respected. We would, of course, succeeded in everything. Had we done our mission. But unfortunately, we didn't always do it right. Anyway, next week, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll be starting Pirkei Avot from the Perek, actually reading from the Mishnah. But if you will notice that before the Perek begins, there is a famous saying by Chazal, which I'm going to explain now, that says as follows: Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek le'olam haba, shene'emar, ve'amech kulam tzadikim le'olam yirshu haaretz, netzer mata'ai ma'aseh yadai lehitpa'er. Before the Mishnah begins, we will be beginning from Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai, next week, B'ezrat Hashem. What's this telling us? What's this words of the rabbis doing here? Very important introduction, perhaps, to the Pirkei Avot. It is reminding us that as we are about to begin to learn the Musar, remember, every Jew is special. Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek le'olam haba. Unless he's a Rasha Gamur, unless he's the most wicked and evil person around, every Jew, treat him fairly, treat him respectfully. Don't look down at him. They all have a share to the world to come. A share, it could be a bigger or a smaller, but a share. And even though he may have gone off the derech, it is possible for him to one day return and make a U-turn, to change his ways through teshuvah. It's still possible. And kulam tzadikim, they're righteous. What do you mean righteous? They have the potential. At least in potential, in theory, they are able to reach the highest malot. Everybody can be like Moshe Rabbeinu. Not necessarily the level of nevuah, prophecy, but we can reach a level that is very, very high, in the same way that he reached a very, very high level. That's what it means, kulam tzadikim. Everyone has that potential. Netzer mata'ai. What's netzer mata'ai? That Am Yisrael is the crown of Hashem's planting. That's one pirush. Netzer is also the seedling, that which grows, which eventually becomes a tremendous big tree. What's unique about Netzer Mata'ai? It reminds us that we are Chelek Eloka Mimal, that we are part of Hashem. We have a neshama that is a Chelek Eloka Mimal. We were created with the Tzelem Elokim, the image of God, meaning that we have the free will that animals don't have.
What does Mata'ai mean?
My planting. Right? So we are part of Hashem's planting. We are part of Hashem's putting the seed in the ground and making us come out and flower. And this branch that is coming out from the Mata'ai can eventually become a big, big tree. But what's so special about this Mata'ai is as follows. There is a halacha that says like this: if fruit can become tameh, unclean, if two conditions are met. It's wet, and it has come in contact with tum'ah. It has to have become wet and to become in contact with tum'ah. However, as long as this fruit is still attached to the tree, nothing will happen to it. We want, of course, everything to be clean, tahor, not tameh. Tameh is no good. So we have to be careful with tumah. But as long as this fruit is attached, even if it got wet from all the rain, even if tumah touched it, no tumah can affect it because it's connected to the tree. If a Jew is connected to the Torah, the Etz Chaim, then the Torah will make him somewhat immune to all the tumah that's outside. Somewhat. You have to actually immerse yourself and become wet and detach yourself, and then of course the tumah can grab, chas v'shalom. As long as the Jew is connected, he has a better chance of retaining his kedusha and tahara. Another Mishnah says something similar. You have a fig tree, and the branch is breaking up. And there's figs on this branch that has broken. The fruits will not become tameh on the fig, even though it touched tumah, if it's still connected by a little bit to the tree, that the sap is able to travel to the branch. There's still life there at the branch, then the figs on this branch will not become tameh because it's still connected. You see, even if a Jew is a little bit connected to the Torah, there's always a chance that he will be able to come back. Never give up on any Jew. As long as there's some connection, there's a better chance. But I have some news to tell you. Even though this Mishnah is very powerful, even though this idea is very, very true, to be connected is very, very important, I know cases where Jews were completely disconnected and they still came back. How could that happen? It can only happen in the generation of Mashiach. In the generation of Mashiach, we have a prophecy. Hashem says, I'm sending Eliyahu Navi to bring everybody back. And according to the Kabbalah, if anybody had a parent or a grandparent who had some merit, they're not religious, then the merit of the father or the grandparent will be to their help, to their benefit. Or, if this Jew may not have had a grandparent, but they performed some mitzvah, good deed, years ago when they were young, that will help them. Hashem wants the more and more Jews, as much as possible, to come back, to awaken. So He's sending them all kinds of signs, all kinds of pushing, and using any merit that they may have to wake them up. So in the past it may have been difficult, and today it's very difficult because there's a lot of tumah in the street. But B'ezrat Hashem, at least if we show them the way of the Torah, in a pleasant way of course, then the chances are that they're going to come back, because today Hashem is helping us more than ever. So we're not on our own. If we help and we speak and we show and demonstrate, Hashem B'ezrat Hashem will help us and we'll be able to recover many, many Jews. This is the generation of Teshuvah. It never existed before. 55 years ago, you were walking in Shiraz or in Tehran. Did you ever hear of a concept of a Baal Teshuvah? Maybe 1 in 1,000. Not even in Yerushalayim. Nowhere. Baal Teshuvah? Yeah. He stopped drinking vodka maybe. Yeah, who knows? That he's doing Teshuvah from vodka maybe. But to have gone away and not come back? No. Either they stayed that way or they were always this way, religion or not. Today, Baruch Hashem, you see it's happening all over the world, not just in Israel. So this is a sign Mashiach is coming. This is a sign that Hashem, Baruch Hashem, is opening up His arms at the last minute to enable more and more Jews to come in. And it is our job, for those of us who are living in this generation, to also make ourselves available and to be mochiach and to demonstrate in a nice way, to prove to them the beauty of the Torah, the beauty of the tradition, so they too, B'ezrat Hashem, should have the zechut of seeing the Mashiach very soon. Thank you.